All right, y'all, welcome to the show. I have a very busy one for you. I'm jam-packed. I have more elements than I even know what to do with. It'll be a miracle if I keep this show in order, but nonetheless, we're going to dive in. So, Biden kinda, sorta checked Israel a little bit, but the conversation we're going to have is, does he mean it? Is it real? And maybe I'm a little bit skeptical or even cynical at this point, but we'll get into all of that. I'm, of course, talking about the speech he gave the other day where he was sort of like, hey, dog, wrap it up, wrap it up. We also have Biden's pretty cryptic reaction to Trump's guilty verdict. That's an interesting story. I have MAGA world in total and complete meltdown mode over the guilty conviction. We have Trump's reaction to his guilty conviction in his interview with Fox and Friends. We have Alex Jones blubbering and crying like a baby live on air. And then later on, Tim Pool panics and cuts his own live feed because of something one of his guests said. And that's what we got for you today. By the way, if I start sweating, understand it is hot as fuck in here right now. Crystal and I have been dealing with this AC issue. We keep, in our apartment, we keep getting them to come and, like, check it and fix it, because we have to put it all the way down to, like, 60 degrees for the shit to be at 75 degrees. So I'm sitting here right now, I got fans blowing at me from every which direction, and I'm still hot as fuck, and we're trying to find a solution, man. Crystal was looking at one of those beds, you know those beds that, like, can cool down to a really low temperature. We were looking at that, but those shits are like $9,000, son. So I don't know what we're going to do, but I either need to buy 78 different fans, because every time they check it, they're like, hey, the AC works. It's good. It's like 75 degrees in here. We had to set it at 60 to get it to 75 degrees. What do we do? Anyway, I'm getting off on a side tangent. I'm giving you guys my personal problems. Just know if I start sweating, that's exactly why. All right. So without any further ado, let's dive into it. So the other day, guys, Biden came out and he gave a speech on the Middle East. Now, this happened the day after Trump's guilty verdict came out, so a bunch of people, myself included, were sort of looking at Biden like, hey, dog, what are you doing? If your enemy's destroying himself, don't get in his way. Don't change the conversation from him being a criminal and everybody melting down about it and talking about it 24/7 to remind people that they're pissed at you for what you're doing with Israel. But he came out and he gave a speech, and this is the gist of his speech. So he tweeted this: Israel has now offered a roadmap to an enduring ceasefire. That's not true. More on that in a minute. And the release of all the hostages. Yesterday, this proposal was transmitted by Qatar to Hamas. Today, I want to lay out its terms for the world. So it's a 3-phase proposal. Phase 1 is a complete ceasefire. A complete ceasefire. The reason I'm stressing the word complete is because we've been humanitarian pause, or we'll stop for 2 weeks or 6 weeks and then we'll go right back to bombing you. No, this is a complete ceasefire, withdrawal of Israeli forces, see, this is weasel words, from populated areas in Gaza. Well, there's a lot of areas that are now not populated because you bombed it. So, a little bit of weasel words there. Release of some hostages and some remains of hostages. Palestinian civilians can return to their homes in Gaza. By the way, their homes, for hundreds of thousands of them, their homes no longer exist. A surge in humanitarian aid. That's phase 1. Phase 2 is a permanent end to hostilities. That's good. Exchange for the release of remaining living hostages. Israeli forces withdraw from Gaza. So that would be completely. That's part of phase 2. And then phase 3 is a major reconstruction plan for Gaza, and final remains of hostages are returned to their families. So Biden comes out and announces this. Then we hear Hamas responds. And they come out and say, yeah, we support it. Hamas looks positively on the remarks in U.S. President Joe Biden's speech today and his call for a permanent ceasefire, withdrawal of occupation forces from the Gaza Strip, reconstruction and prisoner exchange. We want the return of the displaced to their homes throughout Gaza and completing a serious prisoner exchange deal if the occupation Israel explicitly commits to that. We consider this American position and the regional and international convictions of the need to put an end to the war on Gaza to be a result of the legendary steadfastness of our people and their courageous resistance. So this, to sum this up, this is Hamas coming out and saying, yeah, bet, we're down. Okay. So I want to lay out the two possibilities here about this speech. There's two ways of reading it. The optimistic way of reading Biden's speech is Biden is trying to use public spectacle to create pressure to force Israel to accept the Hamas and CIA deal that was created and to wrap it up. So, in other words, Biden sees, hey, Israel's really not listening to us when we tell them stuff behind the scenes. It's time to up the pressure. I'm going to give a speech and basically be like, hey, dog, you're dunsies, wrap this bitch up. That's the optimistic way of looking at it. Cynical way of looking at it is, this is another PR stunt for Biden to go out there. It's the equivalent of all the times you did the finger wagging and said, I'm extremely concerned about what you're doing. Here's more money and weapons to keep doing it. It's possible it's that. So it's another PR stunt that Netanyahu will blow off, but Biden can still, in that instance, he appears like the bumbling peacemaker who means well, but is just getting snubbed by a bad guy, Netanyahu, right? Those are the two possible options. Now, what's the reality? Look, maybe I'm jaded by witnessing what we've been witnessing for the past however many months it's been, but Israel comes out and says the following. This is after Biden's speech. This is from the Prime Minister's office. Israel's conditions for ending the war have not changed. The destruction of Hamas's military and governing capabilities, that wasn't in what Biden said. The freeing of all hostages and ensuring that Gaza no longer poses a threat to Israel. Under the proposal, Israel will continue to insist these conditions are met before a permanent ceasefire is put in place. The notion that Israel will agree to a permanent ceasefire before these conditions are fulfilled is a non-starter. So in other words, Israel basically came out here and said, yeah, wrong. We're not doing that. Because our position is the destruction of Hamas completely before we go any step in the direction of peace. So this is them reiterating the original position. Now, by the way, what's so ironic about this is Biden framed it as Israel came up with this deal, and now we're proposing it to Hamas through the mediator of Qatar. This is Israel saying, we don't support the deal that you just said we came up with. And also, this deal that Biden laid out is literally almost exactly like the Hamas offered deal in February. So they got it exactly backwards. Biden's pretending, oh yes, Israel proposed this deal because they're so magnanimous. Hamas, will you accept this? Hamas immediately comes out and goes, bet, that's what we want. And Israel's like, haha, actually our position hasn't changed. So what's the reality? Look, here's my guess. Israel will continue with what they've been doing all along, and now Biden has boxed himself in a corner, and he will pretend like they're not doing that. If he actually cared, if he actually gave a shit, if he actually had some balls, the second Israel does another bombing campaign or another ground invasion or does whatever other war crimes they have on the list, that's when he would say, hey, we had this deal, you violated it, now I'm cutting off all your money and your weapons, I'm going to condemn you with the UN, so on and so forth. But my guess is that's not what's going to happen. That's my guess. So I hope I'm wrong. I hope the optimistic view is the right view, but, I don't know why anybody would believe that at this moment, given the history of how we got here. All right, so let me give you some more. Last time we talked, I told you there are 42 different kinds of torture that the IDF has been doing to Palestinian hostages. Well, now we have some more specifics on that I'm going to share with you. Here's what they've been doing. Stripping male and female detainees of their clothing, blackmail for recruitment purposes, frequent strip searches, insults and profanity, holding naked detainees together, spitting and urinating on them, keeping hands and feet tied for prolonged periods of time. By the way, that has led to a number of amputations because they're cutting off the circulation and they have to cut off hands and feet. Only democracy in the Middle East. Depriving them their right to identity and identifying them only as numbers. Where did I hear that one before? Blindfolding them for very long periods of time, removing women's veils, willful killing, murder under torture, verbal sexual violence, brutal beatings that shattered teeth and bones, sexual violence by touching private parts, electric shocks, threatening indecent assault and rape, severe beatings, deprivation of food and water, throwing stun grenades at them, sleep deprivation, pouring hot liquids on their faces, denial of medical care, producing severe scars on the body, dressing detainees in diapers, marking offensive words on their bodies, refusal to let them shower, lengthy interrogations, long-term deprivation of personal hygiene supplies, questioning by multiple investigating parties, denying female detainees sanitary pads, imposing extended periods of time sitting on knees, preventing the performance of religious rituals, forcing them to sleep on gravel and or iron surfaces, attacking them with vicious dogs, forcing them to sleep on dog droppings, inviting Israeli officials and civilians to witness torture operations, subjecting them to loud noises, photographing them in humiliating situations, holding them in cold environments without adequate clothing. A number of people died when the U.S. did that, by the way, during the Iraq War. Denying them contact with the external world, threatening to commit crimes against detainees and their family members, forced disappearances. So, these are the 42 different versions of torture that have been done by the IDF. This is stuff that Euromed Monitor, the human rights group, has evidence of and personal stories of. Absolutely grotesque. An Arab Israeli woman was detained and blindfolded by police officers over social media posts criticizing the war. The state prosecutor's office said the reasoning behind the police's physical conduct in the arrest is, quote, unclear. So I want to reiterate that one more time. Let me say this very simply. An Arab Israeli woman was detained and blindfolded because she criticized the war. Interesting. Let me show you this clip that just came out. This is Bill Maher talking about why you should support Israel and why you shouldn't care so much about the Palestinians.
Because values and customs make a difference, okay? And the people of Gaza, by the way, if the Israelis did get rid of Hamas, they'd be doing a giant favor to the people of Gaza who hate Hamas too. But let's just go through the lists. Because the Israelis look like us in most ways, values-wise. Maybe we're not doing it the right way. I don't know. Religious tolerance. That doesn't exist in Gaza. You're either Muslim or an infidel, and you better be a Muslim. Female freedom, free and fair elections, free speech, gay rights.
He's talking about religious tolerance, free speech, equality. An Arab Israeli woman detained and blindfolded because she criticized the war. Tell me more about free speech, you fucking smug prick. God, I hate him so much. He's such a fucking sloppy thinker. These guys are good, and these guys are bad. Okay, they're enlightened Western values. Okay, don't look at the fact that it's an ethno-state and a theocracy, and it's a criminal thug gangster state that's permanently occupying an underclass. Don't look at that part, okay? By the way, he's actually not done. Let me listen to the rest of this.
Pedophilia? I'll put that under don't ask.
Pedophilia, he said. Pedophilia. So he's trying to say Palestinians are pedophiles and Israelis are not? What? By the way, what's ironic about this, I'm sure you guys have seen these stories before, but since any Jewish person throughout the world can move to Israel, they could just move there. It becomes sort of like a safe haven for criminals escaping prosecution. Look, Israel becoming safe haven for pedophiles with laws that allow any Jews to legally return, activists claim. Many accused Jewish pedophiles in U.S. flee to Israel. And what's Bill Maher saying? He's saying the opposite. He's saying all those Palestinians, they're known for their pedophilia or something. What the fuck?
Child brides and so forth. Equality of the sexes. I'll categorize that under don't make me fucking laugh. The fact that, these people think that this is where they should be aligned with? That these are the values that you support?
Yeah, Bill, I think it's about two very simple things. Number one, illegally occupying a people is bad and wrong, full stop. Number two, stop carpet bombing innocent civilians like women and children. I think that's the main issue people have. Please stop illegally occupying a people, taking away all of their sovereignty and their independence. Please stop doing that. And please stop carpet bombing women and children. I think that's where the sympathy comes from. Oh my God. All right. These three young men were volunteering to cook food for the hungry in central Gaza before Israel killed them this morning. Tariq, Hamza, and Abdul Rahman Darwish. Okay. Look, I'm going to show you these. I'm going to show you these guys. and they ended up getting killed by Israel.
يسعد صباحك قائد. ايش طبخين اليوم؟ شفت فيها صلصه الحكايه.
اليوم ان شاء الله سباجيتي.
اوبا يعني اليوم معكرونه سباجيتي على هيك.
سباجيتي اليوم.
يلا يا سيدي يعطيكم الف عافيه.
الله يعافيك يا رب.
الله يعطيكم الف عافيه شباب. الله يعطيكم الف عافيه. يعطيك العافيه. حاج طارق احلى شيف.
الله عليكم.
خليكم بارك فيك يا
الله
رب.
يتقبل منا جميعا ان شاء الله.
امين امين. الله يعطيكم الف عافيه شباب. للامانه يعني اكل طيب وكل الناس الحمد لله وزعنا عليهم بشكروا وبقولوا للامانه الاكل طيب ما شاء الله عليه. الله يعطيكم الف عافيه. حاج عمر يعطيك الف عافيه.
It's hard for me to imagine the extreme courageousness and bravery of people who are acting as aid workers in Gaza, knowing that there's a full-scale ethnic cleansing and genocide going on, know that the IDF targets civilians all the time. They've targeted aid workers. There's hundreds of aid workers have been killed. Knowing that, and still going to feed hungry people. Rest in peace to these guys. So here we go. We've talked about, the various avenues where the IDF brags about their war crimes with each other. There's that Telegram channel. There's a lot of stuff on TikTok that they put out there that's like, hey, look at us, war criminals. We're so proud of it. Well, we got another one for you. Dear UN, thanks so much for your humanitarian aid. We are just sifting through it. An Israeli soldier filmed himself consuming humanitarian aid intended for displaced Palestinians after they were killed and displaced in Gaza. It's one of hundreds of war crimes posted every single day. And then finally, the Maldives will ban Israelis from entering the country over the war in Gaza. So, look, here's the thing. Actions like this, right? If you had, let's say, for argument's sake, you had every single country in the world say, we don't allow Israelis in anymore. Totally isolated, total pariah state in every way, shape, and form. Even your citizens were cracking down on. If the whole world did that, would that force some degree of change? I think inevitably. Because I think a very similar thing happened with apartheid South Africa, where they were economically put on an island. They were economically cut off from the world. And that sort of forced change on them, right? So in a sense, I understand where this comes from. At the same time, do you guys remember when Russia illegally invaded Ukraine? And then basically the entire world, and even groups that do sporting events and things of that nature, professional sports organizations, they said, we're just going to ban all Russians, right? We looked at that and we said, you know what? That ain't right, man. Yes, Vladimir Putin's a war criminal. Yes, the military of Russia is wrong. But some random fucking dude named Sergei is not to blame for the actions of the government of Vladimir Putin. In fact, you don't even know. They may be against it. We saw some anti-war movements pop up in Russia right after that illegal invasion. And I think the same thing stands here. If you tell me, hey man, we're going to sanction all of the top Israeli government officials, we're going to have it so none of them can travel anywhere, all the countries banning them from stepping in there, sure, I'm with it. IDF members, if you're in the Israeli military, you can't travel anywhere. All these countries respectively have banned you. I'm with it, 100%. To say every Israeli, I just don't think that's fair, because there's a number of people who have nothing to do with this. There's also a number of people who are fucking against it, right? We've covered, it's not enough. It's not enough of them. That's clear. We've seen the terrifying polls about a large percentage of them actually support the actions of the IDF. That's horrific. But there's also been people who've been locked up because they speak up against it. Should they also not be allowed to go anywhere else as a direct result of what their fellow countrymen are doing that they're against? I just don't like broad, generalized, sloppy, bigoted type thinking, right? Ban the military members, ban the Israeli government officials, 100% with it. Don't ban all Israelis. That ain't right. Now, again, having said that, we could all see why they were doing it back when Russia invaded Ukraine and the world was trying to, hey, what do? We got to punish them. Quick, go. And they came up with that idea of just ban Russians from doing anything anywhere ever, right? I understand where that instinct comes from, but we got to be smarter than that. We got to be more nuanced than that. And again, I'll reiterate, ban Netanyahu, ban Ben-Gvir, ban Smotrich, ban Yoav Gallant, ban the entire fucking government. Anybody who's for this war, ban them in the government. Ban the IDF members, especially if they're participating in this. Absolutely. They're doing a genocide. They're doing an ethnic cleansing. I got nothing but disdain for them. But not every single Israeli. That's crazy. Now, by the way, just to reiterate, BDS is the way to go. That's the way to go. I think the only thing, obviously, Biden and the U.S. are not going to do dick to really end this and bring about. It's not going to happen, right? So what does that mean? That means we really are reliant on the rest of the international community. We need every state that does trade with Israel, every single one, needs to say, you know what, we're cutting it off. We're not doing trade anymore. We're not doing trade because we need to force you to stop being genocidal psychopaths. And if that comes about through banning military members and politicians from traveling anywhere, if that comes about from boycott, divestment, and sanctions, if that comes about from international isolation, similar to what happened with apartheid South Africa, that is a very smart way to do it. That is a very, very smart way to do it. All right, guys, so there's your update about what's going on right now. I mean, I'm curious to see what you guys think. Is Biden's move a cynical PR stunt yet again? Try to make it look like he's the bumbling do-gooder even though he has no intentions of following through? Or is it a genuine and sincere attempt for him to be like, look, motherfucker, wrap it up. You're hurting my poll numbers now, and we got to bring this to an end. I'm certainly more on the cynical side on this one because of what's happened in recent past history, right? That's why I'm so cynical. But I would love to be proven wrong. I would love to see the second Netanyahu does another war crime post Biden giving the speech. I would love to say, no, we meant it, bitch. And they cut off the money, they cut off the weapons, etc. So, look, like I said, silver lining, one of the positive things is you actually are seeing a lot of countries now stepping up and saying, you know what? We recognize Palestine on the 1967 borders now. We recognize Palestine. And you are getting the sense that there is a breaking point for a lot of these countries. And we might actually get to a place where a lot of these nations around the world do simply just cut off ties with Israel. If I was any of these countries, I would absolutely recall your ambassador, cut off diplomatic ties, do no trade with them. Because that's the thing that'll force change. That is much more likely to force change than anything fucking senile, demented Joe Biden will do. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.